Welcome to part 4 of the PyScript tutorial series. I think if you made it this far, you need no further introduction to PyScript, so I'll start by explaining what we built and we hop right in to write some code. So this is part 4 of the end-to-end PyScript tutorial series. The links to part 1 through 4 will all be in the description. Over the last few videos, many in the comments asked if they can see a more clear-cut example of using PyScript in conjunction with events and events handling. So this is what we'll be building today. A contact book, a guest list for next wedding or birthdays. It showcases some of the more advanced tricks in PyScript, but it's largely based on the same semantics and the same design patterns. So what makes this different from other PyScript tutorials in this series is that it more clearly demonstrates the CRUD, the CRUD pattern, the create, read, update, delete paradigm using PyScript. It also has no dependencies, so whatever you see is done with very simple lines of Python code plus the PyScript library itself. Let's dive in. So as usual, I have my IDE open up. I will have my Firefox open up on the bottom left. We're gonna go ahead and just create a new directory on our desktop. So let's go ahead and say desktop, and what do we want to name this? We want to name it let's say guestbook, right? So just gonna do that, and we're gonna just open that up in code. So just gonna say code dot. If you want to verify, just pwd would verify that. All right, so let's clear the screen. Okay, I guess you know what's coming next. We're gonna have to create a new file. So let's go ahead and let's just say Control N, Control S to save it. We call it index.html. At this point, you can just open that up in your browser or just create run it in a server, and use AMET abbreviation to just go ahead and say exclamation mark and then hit tab. That will just complete that using AMET abbreviation. We talked about this before in other videos, so we're not going to talk about that now. You can save that, and you should see that the browser comes up. You can see that the name is document here. That's from this. Let's change that. We're going to call it guestbook. So let's spell it out, guestbook, and just put a nice emoji there. Emoticon, I don't know what it is. Emoticon. I'm too old for this. I don't know. I'm 32. I'm 33 now. So whatever it's called, emoji, stickers. I don't know. Stickers sounds lame. And then what we want to have next, we want to do the same thing as we've done countless time before over this series. So want to bring in PyScript, right? And to bring in PyScript, you just have to say link, and then now you just have to give it a link, and the link would be the same as what we've done over the past many different videos in this series. And then we're gonna have the same thing now for this is all the CSS. So CSS stands for cascading style sheet. Cascading style sheet basically controls the aesthetics, the layout, the colors, all of those nice stuff. But we want to have the JavaScript as well. So we want to say script and want to say source. Then we're gonna paste in the same thing, except now it's just gonna be .js. All right. We're gonna also use differ. Talk about that before as well. So we're not gonna dive in here. I tend to like to bring the title down. I like to bring my link down like that, just to sort of, here's my meta, here's my link, here's my script, sort of keep it nice and clean like that. Within body, let's just give a header. I don't care what the header says. It could be something like, since this is guestbook, we can say guestbook. Again, just repeat that. I guess that's kind of good enough. It's sufficient. So this we just print out the guestbook up here, or guestbook in PyScript, right? Or with PyScript rather, right? Now let's open up a div. This is where the main content of the body goes. So this is where all our main sort of functionalities go. I want to maybe scope this down a little bit. I don't want it to be like too huge. So I'm probably gonna do this real quick as well. Just gonna say style equals to width 80%, so that it doesn't go and span across the entire thing. All right. Then what I like to do is I could write my logic in here, but it's not clean enough. So what I tend to do nowadays is I tend to just create a new folder, and I call it scripts. So scripts is where I store all my Python script. In here I have the utils.py, all my other helper files, I guess. For example, we can have pylist.py. We're gonna be doing a lot with pylist, so I want to put them in its own file, pylist.py. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go ahead and say something like, this is something that you haven't seen before, so it's gonna be something new for you. It's called py-register-widget. And when you do py-register-widget, you want to put a source, and the source is just gonna be for us, it's just gonna be whatever we name the file there. So we're gonna have scripts / and then pylist.py. So that will just go into scripts and then take pylist.py. That's where it's gonna source it from. And then when you register a widget, you have to give it a name. So this is kind of like you're creating your own components in a way. If you're familiar with like Vue or Angular or React, it's kind of a in a way you're trying to say that I want to create this tag that doesn't exist. For example, I could say something like py, some sort of like demo book, right? And then if I do that, then in here I could go ahead and say something like py demo book, which is pretty amazing, right? And now py demo book, whatever it is, whatever this py-demo book means is gonna be whatever you give into this py-register widget. So this will make more sense later. So once we start to create this pylist.py, we are gonna have a few classes in there, and those things are gonna be what give this py-demo book some sort of semantic meaning, because otherwise this is still not doing anything right now. Okay, so let's save that and let's open up, let's close this get started now. We can just bring this to the side if you want. Control B to hide the sidebar. Now really quickly, if I go to the PyScript repository, so this is in PyScript, and I look at the source of PyScript. So this is what gave PyScript, the behavior. All of this stuff is, the implementation of PyScript itself, right? And I want to search for PyItem. So PyItemTemplate. This is the PyItemTemplate, and there is also another thing that I'm gonna search for called PyListTemplate. So PyListTemplate, and PyListTemplate and PyItemTemplate is the two classes that we're gonna be using now. All right, if you want to, you can read about documentation, read about, what it does, look at all the different methods and stuff. We're actually going to inherit this, and then from this, we inherit that, and then we're going to overwrite some of these results. For example, we're going to inherit PyListTemplate, but then we're going to overwrite the add, where is the method? Let me find add here. We're going to overwrite this behavior. And then same thing up here, when we inherit from the PyItemTemplate, we're also going to inherit that, and then we're going to overwrite the onClick behavior, which is this one. Right now it's just pass, it's not doing anything. We're gonna overwrite that, and we're also gonna overwrite the render content to give us the the desired result. All right, so I want to keep this practical enough that I don't want to go and walk through each of this function, what is all of this line of code is doing, but I'll drop a link there and you can go and read that up on your own if you want to. But just remember that the name that you want to inherit from, so the PyItemTemplate and the PyListTemplate. So let's go ahead and see how we go about that, right? So let's start with class, and we're gonna say PyItem. So here it's gonna inherit from the PyItemTemplate. So we're gonna say PyItemTemplate. It's gonna complain that, hey, where is PyItemTemplate from? But it's great because when you first brought in PyList, that actually gave you all of these nice goodies already. So even if it complains here, you can either disable your linter or just ignore that. If you think it's ugly, just sort of disable that temporarily. All right. And in here, let me just put the documentation links as well. So I say PyListTemplate and PyItemTemplate. Read documentation. I want to say go and read it from here. Then we just have to pass right now. Same thing for class PyList. We are also gonna actually inherit from PyListTemplate. It's also gonna complain and say, hey, where is that from? Well, that's okay because we know that we imported that. And let's just pass right there as well. Okay, now let's take a look at the documentation again. So if you save it now, open up documentation. PyListTemplate, PyItemTemplate, this is PyListTemplate. It asks you for a certain thing here. Say theme, this is the theme, and then there's the item class, PyItemTemplate. All right, cool. So what we want to do is to first of all take the item class, and we want to say the item class would be this PyItem. So I want to change this to item class. I want to say this is PyItem. And then in the add itself, let's see, this is the PyList item template. Now let's find the add. All right, this is the add, right? Okay, so we want to overwrite this. We don't want any of this. We want to overwrite that. So we can say def add, and if you know any kind of OOP, Python OOP, then this looks very familiar to you. You want to always put a self because when you call the function, the first thing is always going to be self, and the second is item, and you want to just maybe say something like check if the is instance item, check whether it's a string or not. If it is a string, then I don't know, maybe give it the item equals to item, or maybe this is the content, and give it a created at, and here you just want to say date time, right? So you can go ahead and just say from date time, import date time as dt. All right, and in here you just want to say dt.now. So this basically just saying datetime.now. And then you want to call the parent class of add, which is here. Then you want to go ahead and use this magic here. So how you do that? How do you call the parent class there? So you use super. So you say super, and want to say dot add, and here this is what you created. You name it item, so you want to say item, and then here you want to say labels equals to, and because we have content in here, we just want content. Let's just say content, and we say state key. We can have nothing right now. It doesn't matter. State key comes into this PyItemTemplate later, and we should be set, and we will see what happens here. But for now, if you don't want to, you can even just ignore that, right? So that is that. So again, these are all from the PyScript itself. And now that you have PyItem and PyList, what do you want to export here? So in a way, what is it from this PyList? You said that this is the source, right? Scripts, PyList, this is this. And what is it that you want to actually bring in here? So actually in this case here, what you want to bring in, let's actually put it here. You want to say use the class, and you want to bring in the PyList. So this is called PyList with capital P and capital L, right? So it's gonna go into this script. It's gonna find this class, which is this. You want to be careful of calling it CLASS. You want to call it KLASS class. Why? Because CLASS, that's a reserved keyword in JavaScript. So if you put this in, if you say something like class, then it may confuse the browser into thinking like, okay, what is it? You know, is it the JavaScript class? Is it you know, is it a Python thing? What is it? So we want to say KLASS. But essentially here is saying that go into this file and look specifically for this thing, and whatever it is, whatever this thing is, that functionality, that piece of functionality, you're going to turn that into a widget, and you're going to give the widget a name called PyDemoBook, and then you can now use PyDemoBook. In truth, PyDemoBook is a pretty bad name, so we want to give it something that makes more sense, something like, I don't know, contact list, I don't know, guest list is also okay. Then want to proceed to give it an ID. I guess you can call it contact book now here. I think you want to stay consistent. What do we keep calling it? We could call it guestbook. So I want to probably call it guestbook. Okay, just to stay consistent. So that's the guestbook, all right. Then we want to have folks who visit our website to enter, you know, or we want ourselves to be able to enter name and email addresses and stuff so that it adds to it, right? So let's go ahead and create something like a field, something like an inbox field where folks can enter the name and their emails and stuff, all right? So I want to maybe use, here I'm going to use py-inputbox. Also, it's something that is brought in by PyScript. So we're going to say py-inputbox, and we're going to give it an ID. We're going to just call it new entry. Now you can say define something like entry, and you can write your own function. Okay, so this is something like this is the event. Then you can check for something, if true, do something. Okay, right now it's not gonna work, so we're gonna just pass now. I'm gonna save it as well. And now if you look at your browser, you should see that there is an address box now. I mean an input field. I mean, here we're going to use it like an address box. We're going to say that, okay, this is where you enter your name, you enter your email and stuff, and we're going to add you to the list. And you can see the list coming up later. But input box itself is nothing fancy. We want to say that if the entry is, this is not really meaningful. Let's go ahead and do something instead of just using a pass, right? So we're going to scroll the way down. I like to put this usually at the end of the, you know, just before the closing body tag, but you can put it, I guess, anywhere, right? Just be consistent. That's all. That's what I'm saying. Just be consistent. I want to have PyScript. And PyScript is something that allows us to write our Python script in here. So you can do something like import math, and then you can do something like math.log or whatever, right? But what we want here is we want to have a functionality that allows us to add a contact. So I want to say define add contact, and I want to say pass, because now we can go ahead and say add contact. Here, let's think about what we want. We want to have something like guest data, and this will just have a content, and this will just be the new entry value, this value. So new.entry, that's this, because we name it new.entry. I want to say value. And here it asks for a created at as well. So let's go ahead and do that as well. Let's say created at, and we're going to say dt.now as well. And then once we have this, we have the content, we have the created at. So this is the content, this is the created at. Okay, once we have those things, what do we want to do next? We want to bring, this is the guestbook. The ID is called guestbook. And this is basically, the ID guestbook refers to this. It's actually an, a HTML element of py-contact-list, right? Where is py-contact-list from? It's from here, this one, because this is the name py-contact-list. Let me actually maybe show you a little bit more of this, right? So py-contact-list, and this basically calls the class here, and you have access to all of these things in here. So one of the things that you have access to is add. So we could go ahead and basically say take the guestbook, and we can call add just like this, and we can add guest. So now this is going to call the add, and it's going to use this one. If this is successful, then you want to also remove this is the new entry. You want to clear that field. So I want to say new entry dot clear. So that is just going to clear the field, right? This define entry itself, we are going to change that, because what we want is to instead listen to the on key press and we want to say on key press, if the key press, if e.code equals to enter, then you perform that action. So meaning you can type as much as you want, but when you hit enter, if this is the on key press, if the key press is enter, then go ahead and perform that add. All right. Of course, we want to call this function. And it's because we misspelled the new, that's why it's and the way I troubleshoot is I see that, okay, name new is not defined. Immediately my first thing when I troubleshoot is I go and look for all the new. So I would do something like Control F, search for new, and I see where it appears. And so it says, oh, new. Okay, that's a misspelling. So let's put that correctly, set that up. Now we can close this. Let's try that again, all together. Say Samuel, okay, Andy, John, pretty nice. All right, actually I'll probably change a few formatting later, but let's go ahead and implement our other logics. Okay, you have the e.code equals enter, do this. So basically you're listening on a key press, and the key press will be enter, right? And if the enter key press is hit, then you want to perform that. But the guests have no idea what this is. So let's go ahead and inform our guests about that functionality there. So just being a good UX designer or developer here. I guess you can say something like, you can use the enter key, right? And you want to format this a little bit differently from the rest of the text. So I want to say enter, or maybe capital enter. Then I want to have something, I don't know what is this, maybe it's called emoji. If anyone know what I'm calling this stuff, is this emoji? Is this, what is the difference between this and this? Do I call this emoji? Do I call this, I don't know, icons? I don't know. English is not my first language, so I don't know. Enter to insert a guestbook entry. Whoops. All right. So guestbook entry. You can use enter. I don't know what does TechBros call this? I mean, I know this is kind of it's all still Unicode, so it's still fine. But is this emoji, or is this emoticon? Or is this I don't know what it's called. Okay. So to insert a guestbook entry, let's save that. Let's quickly just change this up a little bit. I'm gonna say style. Want to have font size equals to 2, emphasis EM. Save that. All right, so we have guestbook with PyScript. You can use enter to insert a guestbook entry. All right, let's try that again. Samuel, John. All right, cool. There is a checkbox here that allows us to delete this guestbook. If we said, oh, we no longer want to invite that person, we can, but we're not doing anything with it. So if we check right now, it's just checking that. It's not really giving us any functionality. So let's maybe implement that next. So we want to say, if you want to cross that out, you can. And to support that delayed functionality, I want to maybe have here, change this to deleted. I want to say this is false. And then how do you delete something? Well, remember how I tried to delete by clicking on these buttons? So I want to use the on click here to sort of create the delete. All right. So the way I do that is I can just say define on click, and I just overwrite on click. Let me spell that correctly. And let's say self event equals to none. Event is not something we're going to use anyway, so we don't have to worry about what it is now. But let me just say pass. If I look at the documentation, let me say on click, Control F, on click. Okay, so that's a pass. It does nothing. So we're just going to inherit that and just write something. Say if we click on this, what should happen? Okay. So because now I have the deleted key, I want to say that take the self data. I want to say take, whoops, date, not data, date. Okay, I want to say the deleted, which is here, which is this. Well, I want to set this to be the opposite. So if you set this to be false, then what happens if the person delete, if click on that again? So it's still going to be false. So you want to essentially say something like this to sort of change that, to flip that. But in Python, we're going to say not, right? Not self data deleted. In JavaScript, you would have something like, to flip it over, you would say something like x equals to, and then you would just flip it, right? And say x, whatever, right? And then I also want to give an effect, because when I click on it, there's nothing happening. I want something to be happening to show that, okay, we no longer inviting this person to our wedding or birthday, right? So how do we do that? We can say self.strike, self.strike, self.data, and we want to say deleted. So that is going to be just add a strike across it. And if you wonder where is that from, you can just search for strike. You will see that strike is here. It basically just add a class called line through and remove class line through. So this is all very simple CSS stuff. If you just add a line like that, for example, if I go and inspect the element here and I just say I guess text decoration, I think, and I said line through. You see that just cut through that. So adding a line through basically just does that. All right. And here we can either do that by hand, but since PyScript provides you that functionality saying add class line through, let's just use that functionality. And let's go ahead now and test everything out again. Save that. May need to add the deleted, set that to be false. So realize that there is an underscore here. Instead, we're using the dash, I think, earlier. So that's not nice. You want to stick to something. So I'm gonna use the underscore because it's pi. We're gonna use the snake case here. If you do a quick sanity check, let's add Samuel again, and let's add Tira. So there are 2 persons invited to our wedding. Now, if I click on Samuel, so if I click on that, okay, nothing should happen because it has nothing to flip, right? There is no deleted. So we want to flip it, and want to initialize that by first there is a content, but want to say deleted, and we want to give it a false. Okay. Now, if I try and have Samuel, and I have Tira, and if I try and click on this. Okay, now it gets now the whole thing gets flipped. Click on this. Okay, now the whole thing gets flipped. All right, so let's try that again. But one other thing is that when I take that off, for example, if I click on this, but if I take that off, look, I can take. If I tap on the name itself, only that gets the class gets added and the class gets deselected, but this doesn't change. So we want to actually change this, and this is actually going to be the element.check. So if you have done any kind of JavaScript or any kind of front-end work before, you know this is actually the event or rather the element.check, right? So let's do that. Let's go and add that. So we go into PyItem, and we want to say something like self.select. And what is that thing called? That thing is called input. So this is basic front end, right? And I want to say element.check. And from check, you want to say that should reflect the status of deleted. If the deleted is true, then they should be checked. If it's not, it shouldn't, right? So want to reflect that, we want to say self.data deleted. So now it should reflect that. Let's try again. So you see that when we do front-end work, it's a lot of like just trial and error for me. I personally, I go back and forth between the browser and my IDE and sort of like implement a change and see, you know, very small unit changes, see if it that reflects you know, that meets my expected output, right? So let's try again. Samuel, Tira, let's try that. And let me tap on the name itself. If I tap on the name itself, I expect this to be checked because of the code that I just implemented. So let's do that. Okay, now it's doing that. What if I tap on this? Okay, it's gone. Tap on this. Tap on this, gone. Tap on this, gone. All right, try that. Okay, so after a few changes, we see that this is clearly working now. So we're pretty happy now at this stage. We don't actually want to call this content because our guests are not objects. We're not savages. When our humans are they're humans, we don't want to call them content like they're, you know, like they're some kind of objects. So instead, what we're gonna do is we're gonna call it name and email and stuff, right? So I guess again, every time I implement a change, I start from the model. Then I reflect that on the front end. So here I have the py list, and this is the add. I want to change this add. What I like to do is I like to say this is the item. The item would I want to imagine something like this. I want to imagine that somebody would type something like Samuel and then put the email in there. For example, the email. I really haven't thought about this much, but let's say the email. I want to press enter and I want it to be separated. Okay, Samuel. I want to say that this is the email of that person. So if I click on enter, it's gonna show the whole thing. But I don't want to do that. I want to actually have something like you know, a nice contact book or some icon, something. So how do we do that? So to change that in the add, take the item and split that based on what? Based on comma. So this is going to return a list, right? A list of 2 items. If I put Samuel and then comma and then my name, and I'm going to put a list comprehension around this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say x.split for x in item.split. And I want to say take the first item, call it name, take the second item, call it email. And then here I'm not going to have the content anymore. Instead, what I'm going to have is I'm going to have name, and then I'm going to have email like this. Deleted is still there, and name is going to be name, email is just going to be email. I think this looks about right. So now the labels are not going to have, there's no content here anymore. So we want to change that to name. I want to save that. Do it really quickly. In fact, I'm going to use this a lot, so might as well just copy that, press enter. Key error name. There's no such thing as name. All right, so let's change this as well. create a helper called define extract, because that would extract something. And we set new entry here. And what do we want to extract? We're just going to return what? Just the same technique that we done here. So just x.script for x in new entry dot split, and we just put a comma. That's it. Then we have the add contact. All right. But now we're gonna call this. We actually gonna say here. We're gonna say name, email, extract, and extract what? Now instead of passing content new entry value, we're gonna just take all of this, put that in here, and now we're not gonna have name anymore. We're just gonna not have content anymore. We're gonna say name equals to name, email equals to email. Right. We still have deleted. We still have all of that. We actually still kind of need the date time. So created at again dt.now. Indentation does not match any outer indentation level. So this is the kind of nonsense that sometimes happen. Quick fix is to just not worry about all of this and just sort of remove all the indentation. And let's try that. Okay, so now only the first name gets added. It still works. Cool. Let's try Tira. And let's say Tira works at gmail.com. And let's try that. Okay, cool. All right. So everything still works now, except we don't actually have that appearing on the front end. Not very nice, right? But let's clean up a little bit and then we go and implement that, okay? So, for example, I want to move all of this. I don't want the whole length to be this long. This is really, really long. So I could go up to my div. This is a width of 80% already. But what I can do is maybe change the body style itself. Okay, so body style. And I want to have a margin of 5%. That's the top and bottom. And then I want to have the left and right. I want to have a larger one. So maybe 10%. Let's try that and save that. Okay, now it's better. Now it's going left and right. I want to have another P up here to say something like Pam Bisley, Pam at dundermifflin.com. You log the guy's name, and that was an email. Did I spell her name correctly? Oh, okay, Beesly. So I want to change that. You don't want to give somebody the wrong name. Okay, so now we have that working. All right, let's try Samuel as a supertype.ai. All right, okay. Well, what if we want to give user an option to just hit add contact? If they don't want to use the enter key for whatever reason, if they're not cool enough to use the enter key, because nowadays, you know, what app doesn't support that anyway? You could just write something like Gmail, for example. You open that up, you write something, and you hit enter. Your fingers doesn't have to leave the keyboard to reach for the mouse, right? But let's say they're a little bit old school. They're not as cool as the tech bros. How do we support those people? How do we support them? So you can use a Py button here. Let's add a Py button. Let's add a Py button, and I'm gonna give it a label and say that's just add guestbook. Add guest. All right, add guest is I think it makes sense. Add guestbook doesn't make sense. It just implies that you're adding a new guestbook. So you don't want to do that. You want to say add guest. So I want to say define on click of the event. So if that is being clicked, if this button is being clicked, what should happen? If the button is being clicked, what really should happen is just add contact. The same thing as above. The same thing as this. So let's hit that. And now you have add guest. Let's add a bit of space between them too. You can use div, you can use CSS, all kind of things. But I'm gonna just have a couple break, another break. So yeah, now we have the enter Pam Bisley, Pam at dundermifflin to log the guest name. You enter that, you can hit get. Let's try that functionality. So let's just copy this Pam Bisley. Save that in, paste that, add guest. I'm also gonna switch away from Firefox because sometimes it's not very consistent. And especially for this, I'm gonna change it to Brave instead. And let's try and do the same thing. Let's first try to do this and hit enter. Okay, it works. Now let's try and do this and let's change this to Jim. And change this to Jim. And now instead of hitting enter, let's hit on add guest. Okay, that works as well. Let's try my name, Samuel. at supertype.ai. Okay, it works as well. All right. So the delete also works. Cool. I was having a little bit of a trouble using Firefox. I keep needing to refresh something. I think I may have to, either do the cache or maybe try to remove, instead of having it calling PyScript from remote, you want to just download the script and then just call it locally, source it locally. I guess one or the other. But for me, I'm not gonna try and spend too much time on that. I really just want to get this tutorial out. So I'm gonna be using this Chromium, using Brave, which is Chromium. I guess if you have no prompts using Firefox, then you don't have to worry about changing. And now we have, I think this is kind of nice. We now have the Pam Bisley, we have this. I want to bring your attention to the render content. If you compare what you have in render content, you see that this is a join and then self-date in self-labels. And if you look at this, it actually, the reason why you have this generated from you can actually see this, it's not magic, right? Let me try that again, right? Put my name in here. And I want to just maybe click on this, right click, and then say inspect element. You will see that there is this M0 inline, and you see that there is the flex item center P2. If you look at the script itself, you get the M0 inline from here, and then you get the flex item center P2, you get it from here. So if you don't want, if you say for example you don't want to have the M0 inline, you don't want to have margin 0, you want to have margin of 1, for example, margin of 2, for example, let's say more margin, M2. Then what you need to do is to just sort of inherit from the class here, PyItemTemplate, from this class, and then just modify, override the create. So all you need to do is to just go in here and say create. I'm going to show you how to do that later, but I just want to bring your attention to this because if you want to customize anything at all, it's completely transparent. This is all white box. You can just go in there and change and say, oh, I don't want to have margin 0, I want to have margin right of 2. You can do that. And if you want to add your own class, you can, and then you can customize that using CSS. So a lot of those things, if you read the docs, I mean, there's no docs yet, but if you read the code itself and you poke around the code itself, you will figure out a lot of what to do. In fact, this is how I created tutorials. I just look at the code itself and I figure that out and sort of show you how to do that. And another thing I want to bring your attention to is this render content. You see that if I look at the render content itself, it basically does a very simplistic way of just joining using a dash. So what it means is that if you look at the self.labels and you decide that, okay, for each one of those self-labels, go in there, take the value, and then just join them with a dash. Very simplistic. Now, can I customize this? Of course I can. So let's go back to PyList. And this is the labels. So this is what lending this the magic, right? So it takes all the labels. So let's say if we add multiple labels, if we say no, we don't want to just have the name, we actually want to have email, what should happen? Let's click on, let's do that, and let's see what happens. So if I enter add guest, now you see that the first field is here, then you have a dash, then you have the second field. Pretty cool, eh? So that's kind of where the magic is at. And this is really controlled in this render content. So what if you want to change this behavior? And that is something we're going to do now. So let's go into PyItem and we're going to change that, because why do we go into PyItem? Because this belongs in the PyItemTemplate, which we inherit from PyItemTemplate. And here we're going to just overwrite. We've already overwrite the onClick. So this onClick here, we already overwrite that. Now we want to overwrite the render content. So let's do that. So go ahead and say define render content. And again, the first thing is always going to be self. So if you call a method of the class, the first one is always going to be self. So you want to put self in there. And then what happened here? So if you look at this, it's just going to return this. We don't want this. This is too simplistic. What we want instead is we want to do something a bit cleverer. So let's try and do a couple of more things. Let's actually go get down to name email. All right, this is cool, I think. I want to pass the state key because I'm going to start using that now. So I'm going to say state key. That's also something that you can, if you read the code, there is no documentation now, but if you read the code, you will see the state key reference. So that's there. But let's go back to render content. We can copy pretty much what we have here, but we're going to put it in our own style. So for example, I want to say this is the string I want to render. So string, and I'm going to put a space here, put a book here. This is kind of a contact book, a guest book in a way. I don't know if you find something better, you can use that. And then I'm going to just say, take the self.data and for field in self.labels. And self.labels, where is that from? This. So name, email, okay, take that. So take that, find the self.data, take the value of this, and then take the value of this and join them between them, you want to have that because that separates the name and the guestbook. So if we go here and we try and copy this again, let's see, paste that in, add guest. Okay, we're getting none. Why do we get none? Because we didn't return anything. So we want to return string. Otherwise, we're not returning anything, right? So do that again. Add guest. Okay, now we see Pam Bisley, and then this is her email. Okay. We actually want to have like a time when she's invited as well at the bottom. So we could go ahead and say something like, let's say created time. Created time equals to, now we didn't pass that into labels, so we can't use it from labels, but we still have self data. So we can go ahead and just say self.data, and we want to, what do we name it here? We name it created at. So we want to just say created at. And now I guess you can just add created time. And you can save that. But this is going to be ugly because the whole line is just going to be there and it's not really pretty. So what we want to do, let me show you what I mean by that. So if I click on Python again, and I want to say import, have I done that? From datetime, import datetime as dt, and I say dt.now. It's going to print out this entire string. And if you print that out, so let me say string now, it's gonna still look like that. It's still pretty ugly. If you don't believe me, you can just try and type that in, add guest, and it wouldn't even print because it's not even a string. So let's do that. Save that. You see that it's pretty ugly. It gives you the whole thing, so it's not really nice. It looks like a mess. So what we want to do is we want to change this a little bit, format that a little bit cleaner. Okay, clean it up. Yeah, just have the whole thing in here. So string format time. Then we pass that in, oops, paste that in. And now we no longer need to put the strings around it because it will be a string now. And if we save that, let's try. Pam Bisley, copy that. Yep, it's a lot better, but we want this to be on the second line to just give it a bit of formatting. So we could say plus a break here, and then plus this. In fact, I don't even want this to be like huge as well, so I want to use a f string again, and then I'm gonna just say create, maybe f string double quotes, and then I want to say small plus timestamp so that I can later configure this in the CSS if I want to. So timestamp, I have no plans of doing that, but I could if I want to. Then I could close the small, then I will just have to add my invited at. So invited at, and then have my created time. So let me save all of that. Maybe find a nice, I don't know, emoji, and add that in here. I keep saying emoji, and at the end of the whole video, somebody's going to tell me that that's not really what's called emoji. This is, you don't, that's not an emoji. Anyway, let me just go ahead and put Pam Bisley, put that in, add guest. Ta-da, this is good, right? We have invited at this time, and let's do another one. Let's say Samuel Chan, and that's me, and I'll say supertype.ai. Okay, this is looking good actually. We have the time. We could do a few more. We could try Nayoko, he's my co-founder, and I could put Nayoko at supertype.ai. Please don't spam him as well. And I'm gonna say add guest, and I'm gonna try Vincent. Yeah, Vincent works at Dunder Mifflin, so Vincent at dundermifflin.com. I don't even know if I spell all of these names correctly. All right, cool. But you now see that there are different timestamps here, and we only have the minute, so you're not seeing any difference. If we print out the second, you will see difference. I guess you can go ahead and just customize them, play them, play with it a little bit more, tweak it and make it a little bit prettier, more presentable. But for me, I think this looks pretty good. To be honest with you, I kind of like how it looks like now. And if you try and delete them, you see that it still works, right? You said, oh, okay, we're no longer inviting Vincent to the party. No longer invited. Actually, now that the time has changed, let's do that again. I'm gonna say Toby, and he's gonna be HR at dundermifflin.com. Okay, you should see. Okay, there you go. See, there's a time difference. So I just waited to just try to waste your time a little bit just to get it. Now it's 18. Okay, now you see the difference in there. So this is kind of a nice sort of a nice tutorial to PyScript, the guestbook tutorial. Okay, and this is really coming along quite nicely. Thanks again for those of you who suggested this idea in the comment section. If you have more ideas of what you'd like to see next, then subscribe to the channel. Check out the rest of the PyScript playlist. I built dashboards, visualization, and stuff like that using PyScript. Let me know your experience following along the tutorial. I'm now going to deploy this onto GitHub, and so you have a live demo to play with that as well. Okay, since our app is coming along quite nicely, I've also deployed that onto a URL now. It's onlyphantom.github.io/PyScript-guestbook. And you can also go to my GitHub and you can just fork it and then just make it your own. Just, I don't know, customize it, make it a little bit prettier. But just to show you everything works, you can go to this URL, but I'll just show you really quickly. So for example, I can add Pam Bisley again, and I'm going to just add a name, pam.dundermifflin.com, and I'm going to add Jim, I think Jim Halpert, and I'm going to say Jim at dundermifflin.com. Okay, there's there. Wins at gmail.com. Right, so you can see that all of this is coming along quite nicely. I could use the just to change things up a bit, I'll just use the button as well to click add, and it still worked, right? So all of this is still working. I could delete them. This is all nice. So for those of you who suggested this idea of wanting to see something with you know, more like events handling and stuff like that, I hope that you're happy with the tutorial. If you want to see more, just leave it in the comment section and tell me what you want to see, right? It's been really fun making these videos with PyScript. If you enjoy the content as much as I enjoy making them, please check out the other PyScript videos on my channel. If you think I earned it, then consider giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to my channel for future content. I would really appreciate it. With that said, I'm going to leave you for now, and I'm going to see you in a future video. Take care. Goodbye.